Welcome to Life Coaching on the Move. I'm your host, Dawn Fiske. Welcome to the podcast. If you're a regular listener, as always, thank you so much for coming back. I really am grateful that you keep returning. Thank you if you've been passing on word. This is definitely getting out and about, so someone out there is sharing it for me. So if you would feel happy to rate and review, that helps people find it. Or if you would feel happy to post it on your social media, tell your friends about it, help them download, or direct them to YouTube, where they can also find the podcast on YouTube and listen to it there if it's easier. If you're new, thank you and welcome. This is me. I do not script write or anything. I just chat to you. There are over 70 previous episodes if you want to go back and find them. I would recommend you start at the first one. The first 1 to 10 they're full of the foundation of my coaching. All the other episodes fall out of those ones, so they're the best ones to listen to first. They're all sorts of subjects, from goal setting to resilience to fear, anxiety, all of those things. They're all in the back catalogue. Today I've got a little treat for you. Today, this week in fact, is Mental Health Awareness Week, and I wanted to honour that and acknowledge that by getting in a mental health expert as a guest. So today we've got a guest who's going to chat to us all about what his work in mental health, but also his own struggles, because he has a phenomenal backstory where he himself was diagnosed with terminal brain tumor. But miraculously and thankfully, he is still here today. So he talks a little bit about that as well. So it's an inspiring episode today, which I hope you thoroughly enjoy. The last thing to do before popping into that episode is to just remind you that if you do have any areas that you would like to work on at all, you know where I am. You can always contact me through the website, which is www.milestone-coaching.co.uk. Click on contact me, request a call. I will phone you. If you're struggling with anything, or your youngster needs some coaching support, one-to-one support, or some group coaching on confidence issues, life issues, self-esteem, fear, all of those topics, life struggles that we have, particularly with it being Mental Health Awareness Week, then you know where I am. Please do drop me a line. Don't ever hesitate. Let's get on to this week's episode with Patrick Melville, my guest this week. There will be a small gap and then we'll launch straight into it.
Oh.
Hi, Patrick. Welcome
Hi.
along. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. We got there.
For the listeners' benefit, we've had so many technical issues, but we stuck with it and we saw it through to the end, didn't we?
We did.
Thank you. Now, you and I know each other we became acquaintances and friends through a networking site or company called Only, where you really inspired me because you work in a very similar field. You're a mental health expert. I believe that's the right title. And B, also you've got a really, really inspiring story of your own where you've faced your own challenges. So I had a chat with you, as you know, and invited you along because I just feel that you and I talking together could be really useful for our listeners. With it being Mental Health Awareness Week, I think you've got some really valuable lessons and some thought-provoking ideas that people can take away from this podcast. So thank you so much for coming along. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share. And it's lovely how you said how the network, of course, networking is always important, not necessarily to create business, but it also is, it's not. Sometimes if you share, that has such a strong power. So yeah, Dawn, this has come from it. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome. But tell all of us, how did you get into being a mental health expert in the first place? How did you get into that field?
Well, thank you for asking. I've always had it sort of in my heart and around what I do. And I've, from when I sort of started, even at school, I always loved to sort of be part and helping other people. I remember being 15 years old and I had the opportunity to join the the school army group, and we had to do it for 1 year. So I did it. Wasn't the best, and I left it because just not my style. And I went straight to sort of working and helping care homes. So my Wednesday afternoons were about going in from my school, very smart, lovely school, to care homes, and I played bingo with all the elderly.
Oh.
And that gave me such a smile, even though that we never gave the chocolate at the end to the winner. We kept it because sadly they'll forget. But my point is that I've always had this passion to help, and I had opportunities to be a teacher, and I turned down, but I went away after school, and I did the voluntary work in Colombia and in Ecuador, where I just love to do that stuff. And then I found that I still touched upon it, but then when I had kids and the work, that sort of took it away. But then I got into it when again, you can talk about fate or faith, that I got into when I was diagnosed with a big, with severe illness. And when I came back, I realized the learnings I'd had and the passions that I want to do. Thankfully, I've got my own business, so I could be more agile. And I continued my work to help others. And mental health is something which is so new to everyone. Even terminology, well-being gets sometimes mixed up with mental health and wellness and how to look after yourself. So my role is to help, my passion is to help people understand what mental health is and guide them how to look after themselves.
And could you then, with that in mind, Patrick, because you were absolutely right, but with that in mind, could you tell us what is mental health? What for this week, with it being Mental Health Awareness Week, what should we know about it?
Mental health is actually a neutral statement. If I asked everyone, just have a quick think. If I asked them, the question is mental health, and I'll give 3 answers, possible answers. One is it a positive? Is it a negative? Or is it a neutral? And when I run these in my workshop, it's interesting to hear even hands getting raised when I ask them, right, who thinks it's positive? And I'm sure maybe some of your listeners are putting their hands up, and who thinks it's negative? And some hands might go up. And of course, it's a neutral statement.
Yeah.
Because it's how we are. And I think mental health is a status of how we are sort of with our minds and ourselves. And it's how we cope with life. Physical health is a statement as well. You can either be ill or you can be healthy, and strong. And mental health has the same attitude. So mental health is a way to sort of it's one of the ways to look after yourselves, and is a sort of condition which is neutral, but then it's moving all the time.
So is that then, Patrick, similar to, in terms of our physical health, we can be physically very well, but we might have the odd ache or pain, or we might get the occasional headache if we eat a certain food type, or is that the same? Can we be mentally very well and strong, but at times struggle with stress, or at times struggle with a little bit of anxiety? Or is there a degree? Is it like a spectrum of like on physical health?
Exactly. Now, interestingly, the old school tradition was that mental health was you're either well or unwell.
Right.
You're either ill, and then like a physical health, then you've got to look after yourself, or you're healthy, you're positive. But there's I do work with something called Mental Health First Aid England, which is a UK but also a national role, and I'm an instructor. And what this does, it trains people how to be mental health first aiders, like physical first aiders. And they've actually had something called a continuum, where they add another. So imagine you've got the vertical axis, which is how healthy are you? Are you well or are you ill? And then it adds a horizontal axis, which talks about, are you sort of manageable, and are you happy, and is more emotional side, more social side. And the point there is that you can be mentally ill, but you can still be socially active and positive.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can be sort of not diagnosed with an illness, and of course you can be stressed and really worried, and sort of those mental illnesses kick in.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you can have the other, two areas where you can be actually, there's no mental illness with you, but socially you're not happy. And of course that can then agitate and get more, push the individual more to be mentally ill. So it's interesting how that is mental health. You can still have an illness, a mental illness, being diagnosed with something, but at the same time you can deal with it.
Yeah.
That's quite a strong way of saying to people, if you have one, you need, you can deal with it, and that's been proven.
Yeah, I remember actually listening to an interview with Susan Calman. I think that's the right name. A Scottish comedian, very successful lady, lovely lady. And she was talking about her mental health, and she has she believes always suffered from depression, even as a child. And yet she's functioning, she's successful, she's in a solid relationship, she has good friends, but behind the scenes she has always suffered with depression and battled with depression. So I guess that's a bit like with our physical health. We can be fully functioning, very very successful, very happy, with family, with friends and social, yet be living with type 1 diabetes or something like that. It doesn't define us. It's not who we are. I passionately believe
Absolutely.
It's something that we are living with, and we're learning to cope with and manage and to handle, I suppose, and to live as best a life as we possibly can.
And that's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, if I can add to that and say how, for example, depression is an illness.
Yes.
So it doesn't define who we are. It's not our character. If we've got depression, it's not literally the core of ourselves. It's just we're ill.
Yeah.
And we need to manage that. So it's like, again, if you've got a cold, that's not part of who you are. It's not part of your character and technique and your physical body.
Yeah.
It's a temporary illness which you need to look into.
Yes.
And again, the trouble is that people don't know what to do. People then label it. And of course, the word stigma comes into play, doesn't it? That stigma, and that prevents, getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think are you experiencing an improvement about that stigma in your field? Is it getting better?
Well, yes, it is. There's so much to go on. I mean, if you look at the statistics, the impact of a sort of like bipolar on psychosis, severe psychosis, is as hard as having a physical issue with your back, literally where your bones come out of joint. And it's interesting how there's so much to learn from it. In summary, yes, of course, Dawn, it is getting better. Mental Health Day, which is obviously, there's a World Day on the 10th of October this year. Of course, you've got the week around it as well.
Yes.
So that's a national push, which is a great thing to see. It is obviously fighting for space with diversity, inclusion, ethnic, all those things as well, climate change. But it's taking a step further. It's still being pushed into like a Tuesday. When I do my workshops, it's still a Tuesday 1 till 2, or a 9 till 5 workshop, and then everyone goes back to their day job, and they tend to forget it. We really have to make that time. But yes, it is moving. You've got all these statistics, hopefully making things right, agile working. Hopefully that has a benefit whilst it's under this awful COVID experience.
Yes. I love the phrase mental first aider, because we have in organizations and in schools and as a parent and things like that, most of us have done some first aid training of some sort.
Yes.
Most of us know what to do if you came upon a person that had a real severe cut, we'd know that we need to put something tight around it and hold it up above the heart and things like that. We'd know some basic first aid, wouldn't we? We'd know what to do in some emergencies. Some of us will know more than others. We might have been on a proper full maybe an official first aider. But what should we do
about mental first aid, because we're all in contact with other human beings, whether it's our family members, our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors. What sorts of things, should we be aware of, should we be thinking of, should we be looking out for or mindful of? And if we spot it, what should we do you think, just on a daily basis, that all of us could have in the back of our minds to be aware of?
Well, if you don't mind, Dawn, if I could flip it firstly, I would like to put something before you look after other people. And this is relevant for life as well as, physical. I remember my first job. I came into work. I was working at one of those called an outdoor buying agency for advertising. And I came in and I was really ill. But I had to come in. I didn't want to be seen as someone who's ill. And my boss, the marketing director, said, Paddy, go home. Go home. He literally saw me say, go home. You're ill. And I was like, no, I got to do this. And he said, no, because one, your quality won't be good. And two, you're going to spread it to us. So go home. And that's the natural instinct. We tend to look after ourselves last. So what my point is that we need to make sure we're healthy before we start looking at other people, because we get, it's called something called the frame of reference. The frame of reference gets in the way when you want to help someone anyway, that you tend to label them under your own experience. So it could be family, it could be, you are trying to translate whatever they're going through. If they're not talking, if they're not communicating, if they're worried, you label it based on what you've experienced. And that's a bit, it's a bit, sometimes it can push you in the wrong direction. So my point there is that you need to make sure that you're mentally healthy first. So it's understanding what it is, understanding how you can speak to someone, and obviously take into context what's happening. So I give active listening workshops to commercial companies, anyone basically who wants to build relationships, could be selling their product or managing their staff. And generally, you have to be quite, a bit more lasered in terms of you look at their eyes, you follow the direction of the conversation, you don't interrupt. But and I can go into that. But my point here is that with someone with a mental health potential illness, then you've got to take yourself away from that, and you've got to approach them in a more passive way, listening way. And of course, take that frame of reference away. You are completely open. You need to be open. You need to follow the direction of the conversation. You need to just acknowledge what they're saying. The power of sharing, like we're doing now, is so strong. And even just talking to them is something that can be strong as well. I found that when I was going through my terminal cancer experience, that I just wanted to share. I just people didn't have the answer. My prognosis was really bad, but what I found helped me, and sometimes people just don't know how to help in those scenarios. They're like, what do I say? Some people didn't get in touch because they didn't know what to say. Some people were so worried that would sort of put their foot, again, my prognosis was not good. It was really, because I had terminal malignant brain tumor. But I found even just the opportunity to share helped me, put my feet on the ground. And again, that's one of the learnings. I think if you're trying to help anyone, you don't have to have the answer. You can just be there, just to be a supporting, just to listen, just to be someone that someone can rant to, or even just be with is enough. And that helps them take away from their mind. There's a very famous sort of talk, again, Mental Health First Aid England. If you see someone on a bridge and you think that they're going to jump, do you A, approach them, or B, do you go and get help? And the answer is you go and help them. You go straight to them.
Yeah.
Because obviously you don't know what's going to happen. The second point then is, if you think they're literally going to jump, do you say to them, are you going to jump? Or do you just trying to get into a lighter conversation and start talking about, hi, how are you? And, just try and softly get into the conversation. And the answer is one, you go straight to it, because they're ill, and if they're depressed, their mind is taken over. Literally, they're not living that moment. They are completely transfixed and not in what they're doing. That it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting, that kind of learning when you're talking to people with an illness, how you can talk to them. You need just a bit of technique, but some of the time we do it already, Dawn. And I'm sure there are examples that, you know, the listeners have of when they've done it. And again, it's to focus on those, not to focus on the times when things didn't happen.
And the thing is, I sometimes think that I've many of the listeners who are regulars here will know that I'm passionate about just making connection with people. Isolation is a killer. Loneliness is a killer, without doubt. And if we can just reach out to our friends, to new people, to neighbors, and just smile, wave, have a chat over the fence, just you know, just be there, so that people know that we're there. I know that I've done some mental health awareness for the construction industry, because suicide is very high in construction. There are two in the UK. There are 2 suicides a day in construction. It's a very male dominated environment, quite isolated. They could be on a forklift or a digger or something like that all day by themselves. Lots of uncertainty, lots of pressure, and etc. And rightly or wrongly, males are sometimes still to this day not so good at talking and reaching out to people and telling them telling friends or relatives how they're feeling or their worries, or sharing. But if we can spot that in somebody, in a colleague or a loved one, or, you know, spot a change in them and just be around, just make sure, offer them a coffee, just sit with them and give them 10 minutes, something like that. What would you say to people, you know, if it's their colleagues, for example, if somebody listening is at work and they've noticed their colleague lately has been quite quiet, quite low, bit withdrawn, what would you recommend that they could do or say that would help, do you think?
Well, it's the frame of reference there. It depends, you know, you've got to, when you do mental health first aid England work or mental health first aid, you have to assess the situation. So you take yourself away, you think, I wonder why that person is. I mean, is it because they're mentally ill, or is it because they have just got a big, you know, meeting coming up, or, you know, is it a longer term thing? And of course, then you assess what's happening. Of course, you want to assess, but you can do it yourself. Are you the right person? Or do you have to go and speak to them, or perhaps maybe you have to go to someone else and say, who's a closer? Maybe they're a line manager if it's a work context, or maybe it's a family member. You can talk to them, or maybe you are the right person, and then you approach them. And of course, you have to assess that, know what the situation is. And that's where listening comes in. We're really bad at listening, aren't we?
Yes, I've said this before.
Yes. We never get taught how to listen.
No.
At school, and I'm sure maybe listeners can think, have you ever had a time where you've had training how to listen? Speaking, yes, you probably training for that. Writing, yes. Reading, yes, from a school age, but from listening, I never had a lesson. Right, this is how you listen. And that's crazy, because then we use it most of our time. There's a statistic. We use our listening skills 42% of our time. We spent under half a year learning about it, how to listen. And for writing, we have 12 years worth of learning about writing. We use it 9% of our time. Now, isn't that crazy? The fact that we use our listening more, but we don't have any training about it. So firstly, it's okay to get things wrong, but at the same time, when you're approaching someone, you've got to listen to them. Active listen, not just hear them. The difference between listening and hearing.
Yeah.
And of course, you got to be open, follow whatever they say, follow direction. That's a bit of the tagline of this podcast, isn't it? Follow the direction, listening to what they're saying, and then repeating what they're saying, summarizing if you can, so that you understand, but also that they know that you are taking interest, in them. And then hopefully things will come out then. And then from then on, you can say, you can then have some insight on where they can go. Where do they speak? Who do they speak to? Maybe it is you, or maybe there's someone else they need to access, and maybe just to release whatever problem there is happening. And you can maybe suggest stuff. You don't tell them what to do. You can suggest stuff.
And they've taken the first step, haven't they? They've opened up.
Big jump. The power
Huge
of sharing.
step.
Yes.
Yeah. It can't be underestimated, can it? I think that once you've, even just actually by hearing yourself say it to somebody,
yes,
you've accepted, this is how I'm feeling. You've made huge progress just by voicing that, sharing it, and then, as you say, that person may support and help you.
Yeah.
That they may point you in the right direction, but you've taken that step now. You're on that road to finding some solutions, getting some support, not being alone, not struggling in your own mind, isolated.
That's a really strong thing, and to know the power of sharing. When you and I give this my workshop, you know, it helps you articulate the issue. And actually, sometimes when you say those words, you realize it's not as bad as you think.
Yes.
But when you share, you get a new viewpoint as well about what's going on. It also gives you reassurance, and the person you're speaking to, because they're going to get worried, like, am I saying the right thing? Am I making this worse? And it also gives time to think. So the sharing, it's a dual conversation. It's a relationship. To avoid just letting your mind take over. And of course, your mind doesn't have the answers.
No. And if you keep it in your mind by yourself, trapped in your head, it just whirs round and round and round like a washing machine on constant. And it gets bigger, and it has such a profound effect on you. The minute you hear yourself say it, and you get context and you share it, that it's like a cloud has been lifted from you just in that very process.
Yes.
You're no longer alone with it.
And you are your mind, Dawn. Definitely, you are your mind. And whatever people think, please don't have a go at your mind. Your mind is amazing, and most of the time, it is absolutely doing its job in a positive way. It's helping it. You know, there's 8,000 cells, and actions, subliminal and subconscious and conscious, happening all the time. And of course, your mind gets it right, but on the conscious side, you are your mind. Don't separate from it, but you've got to sort of control it, because it does these negative, what we call automatic negative thoughts, or ants, or cognitive disorders sometimes. But they do it. Your mind does it to protect you. It's not there to cause problems. But we're primitive animals on a mindset. Physically and obviously externally, we're pretty evolved, but our mind isn't evolved as quickly. And of course, it's still going to get that worries to protect you when there's this danger happening.
When it perceives the danger,
fight or flight. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So you got to be careful. Then your mind might label something and say, no, it's fine. That's why a podcast, I'm sure you guys listeners use podcasts, but meditation and headspace is a very good way of getting that mindfulness, getting that calm, but also you learn about your mind. I've just done one about self-esteem and managing anxiety, and how I told you got to accept your mind. And if you get a negative thought, or a negative feeling, you label it. You say that's a thought, and then you move on. You're not ignoring it, but you're not giving your mind the attention that it needs.
Yes, you're not letting it hook into you and grow into something huge. You just exactly. You're accepting. Oh, there was a worry about so and so, but then just not entertaining it and letting it develop into something massive.
And saying to yourself, it's okay.
Yes,
it's okay, because if you say okay, then you're focusing on the issue. If you sort of fight it back, then you add another layer of stress, and it goes up and up and up, and then that sort of leads to burnout. And that's why, for example, males have a higher suicide rate. Even though females might think about it, they don't go through it because they share more. Well, not all in different, obviously, aspects as well. But
yeah, absolutely. Just before we come to an end, Patrick, because I know your time's limited, thank you very much. What I'm it's such an incredible story that you were diagnosed, I know, with terminal brain tumor, and yet thankfully you're still here. What that is incredible. And it's a massive congratulations on that front. I mean, it's amazing. But that must have been hard. It must have given you challenges in terms of anxiety and fear, and what was that like?
Thank you. I still have some of the. It's interesting. My mind's still catching up. Physically, it's amazing. It is a miracle. Like stats. If well, one of my thoughts: if you ever have an illness, no matter, especially major, never Google it.
No, I know. I don't.
But thankfully, because my prognosis was not good. It was literally, under 10% of people who had my condition die. And live. Excuse me.
Right. Okay.
You can tell, Dawn. I'm Googled it, but and also had the fact we're not statistics. That's an amazing thing that someone gave me. Said, "You are not a statistic, Paddy," and it really helped me because I'm not. I, have my own journey, and of course, whatever happens. But I had to learn to look after myself, and I found ways. I have something called the Circle of Strength, which I talk in my workshops. Everyone has their own circle of strength. What makes them strong? Not circle of stress, a circle of strength. So mine was my medication. I changed my diet. I played more piano. I took that up again. I love it. I played Sudoku. I spoke about it. I went to relevant workshops and places to share. I exercised. I gave these workshops. That was a bit of treatment for me. And finding other ways to help. Now, everyone else, on the listeners, you'll have your own circle of strength. You might say to mine, no, fine, do it yourself. That's the responsibility you have and the power you have, whether it be whatever illness it is. And I found that helped me. I got a lovely statistic from one of the best researchers of global tumors, brain tumors from the US. And she said the best patients, the ones who give themselves control and a positive. And I think that's a life lesson. It's not just cancer. So I was able to go 2 years through, after brain operation, radiotherapy, and then chemotherapy for 2 years. And during that time, I had to focus on that, live the now. And I was told the amazing news last year. I was in remission.
Wow, congratulations. That is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Really inspiring. And the word that jumped out for me there, which I am tuned into, is taking control, finding where you've got some influence.
Yeah.
Sometimes in life we feel that everything's running out of control. And COVID, for example, I've talked about this. It feels to a certain extent that we're out of control at the moment. We wait for the next government announcements and decision, and it feels like, are we allowed to do this? Are we allowed to do that, etc. And that's getting a lot of people down. But I do passionately believe we feel better. Human beings feel better when we feel like we've got some control. And that's exactly what you did with your health. You looked at finding some fun, finding some joy, finding the things that you used to love. Taking control with your health, your fitness, your diet. And that makes us feel so much better. So I would say to listeners now, from what you've said, again, it reiterates everything that I believe. No matter what you're going through right now in life, whether it's a work problem, issue, family, health, anything that you're going through at the moment, find what you're in control of and control the controllables, because that makes us feel so much better. And I think that helps with mental health as well. Do you, Patrick? If you feel that you...
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Everything's connected. Your physical health, your mental health, even emotional health. That's a relatively new push, emotional intelligence. We're all connected. I'll leave with one exercise, if that's all right, to everyone listening.
Yes.
Everyone to imagine, please, close your eyes.
Right, I'm doing this as well, Patrick.
Great, and I want to imagine you're in your kitchen, and you can see a lovely lemon on a card on a plate. So go over to the lemon, which is on a plate, and next to the plate is a knife on the right-hand side. Pick up the knife and cut that lemon in half. Okay, cut, 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 cut. Put down one of the halves and hold the other half in your left hand and cut a nice big slice. Slice really big, juicy from the middle. You can see it dripping now. Oh gosh, yeah. Now put everything down. Pick up that slice you've just cut and bring it up past your sort of tummy, past your neck, up to your mouth, and you can see it sort of right in front of your eyes. There's drips. Maybe there's some sun. You can see through it. Ooh, and you can feel the rind. Now, open your mouth and put the lemon in and shut your mouth and give it a big chew. Chew, 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 chew. Go, go. And right, so you can feel the juice. You can bit sour. You can feel the rind under your tongue. It's all over the place. Now, I want everyone now to tell me, on this from Dawn, your delegate one, have you got saliva in your mouth? Extra saliva in your mouth?
Yes, I think I have. I was actually focusing on the bitter sourness. I was cringing.
But that's exactly so. But do you have a lemon in your mouth?
Yes.
Ah.
Well, no, I don't.
Yeah, interestingly.
No.
So you've told your mind. That's a power you have. The control you have in your mind as well, with mental illness and all that. And also, so you have that power to calm your mind. That's why sort of meditation is really good. You're telling your mind, stop. We'll talk later. But that lemon also excites how you're connected. Your mental mind has told your physical body you've got a lemon, and your body has reacted. Isn't that amazing? That's the power you have. And it took you 15 seconds.
It is incredible how the physical and the mental, I mean, that was just completely imaginary, and yet I got a real physical reaction to that.
Yeah. So maybe the listeners, you try it on your family or friends and it's a giggle. It's quite fun to do.
But that does show, you do highlight there, though, the power of our mind over our body and our body over our mind as well, because just recently I've really been benefiting from short bursts of yoga at home on YouTube. Just, sat on a mat on the floor for 20 minutes, and my word, do I sleep better when I've done 20 minutes before. So much better, because I'm calming my breathing down, stretching my body, calming and quietening the mind, and then I sleep so much better. And if I've had a good night's sleep, I can function much better the next day, and that makes me feel good. And it just little things like that, breaking patterns and cycles, just small tweaks can have such an impact. And I think, and that's me being in control of what I do. I'm controlling something, I'm putting the YouTube on, doing my yoga, taking control, and I feel so much physically and mentally better as a result. And we can all do things like that, can't we? That's back to your circle of strength, isn't it? That for me, yoga would be in there, and for you, it was playing the piano. We've got to find our thing or things, haven't we?
Good.
That's been so useful, Patrick.
Good.
Thank you so much. Now, for the listeners who want to contact you, can they contact you?
Yes.
What would they?
Yes.
Tell us all about that.
So just drop me an email. It's patrick@melville-solutions.com.
Okay. How do we spell Melville?
MELVILLE.
Okay.
And that's my email, and I'm on LinkedIn. That's a good place to go and see, because I've got videos of my talks. That's the best place.
And of course, if anybody's listening, I'm thinking, if anybody's listening here that work in an organization or run their own small business, mental aid first aid training is such a big thing at the moment. It's so important, isn't it? And you are a trainer for those first aiders, aren't you?
I'm a trainer for that, but also I give general mental health workshops to anyone who wants to look after themselves. It's a sort of it's not very long. It's a 1-hour session, and then we go from there.
So it's so important, if you are working in an organization, perhaps put Patrick forward, because I think if we all look after ourselves and each other, we'll be a much healthier nation, won't we? And that's going to help with Corona as well, isn't it?
That's what I hope. Just take the time. It's the one thing to get cut first, but it's the most important thing. Everyone's going to pay for it when they're happy. Well, that's not the best thing for mental health workshops.
It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much. And
thank you.
And thanks for the opportunity. And I wish everyone, yourself, and of course everyone's listening, a safe rest of the week and move to normal.
Take care.
You too.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.